Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She adjusted her lipstick in the reflection of a champagne glass. Not the mirror, not her compact. The glass. Like she was the star of some romantic comedy, and I was just an extra fumbling with my tie in the background. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her inconvenience. The music was too loud for the kind of conversations people were pretending to have. Laughter echoed like it had been rehearsed. The rooftop shimmered under string lights. I stood by the bar, drinking something I couldn't pronounce, watching her dance. Not with me, with him. He was younger, slicker, hair like it belonged in a shampoo ad. They weren't pressed together. It wasn't technically inappropriate, but their bodies moved like they already had a secret. He whispered something in her ear, and she laughed like no one else existed. And maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mom, again. Probably to remind me about the weekend brunch. I silenced it. If I answered, I'd cry. And if I cried, someone would see. And if someone saw, she'd be embarrassed. I'd ruin her night. So instead, I walked. Past the tables of shrimp cocktails and half-finished drinks. Past her coworkers who didn't remember my name. Past the doorman who smiled like I should have known better. I didn't say a word. Not to her. Not to anyone. And still, she didn't follow. By the time I got to my car, the city lights blurred, not from rain. At 3:47 a.m., my phone buzzed again. One word, please. But by morning, it was too late. She was sitting in our driveway, makeup streaked, heels in her lap, mouth open like she wanted to scream, but forgot how to. I didn't get out of the car, not yet. The morning sun spilled across the dashboard, but it felt cold. I was still in the car, keys in my lap, engine off. I watched her through the windshield like she was someone else's problem. Maeve sat curled up on the top step of the porch, hugging her heels, shaking like it was January instead of early fall. I wondered if she realized the porch light was still on, or if she knew she hadn't closed the door all the way. That tiny crack, it reminded me of our marriage. Mostly intact, technically functional, but slightly open. Just enough for something to slip in or slip out. I should have gotten out of the car. Should have asked her why she let him hold her like that, why she laughed the way she used to, only laugh with me. But I didn't. I sat and watched her the same way she looked at me lately, distantly, like I was a memory dressed in flannel. She didn't see me right away. Her head was down, shoulders tight like she was bracing for impact. When she finally looked up, her expression shattered. She stood, mouth parted, eyes wide, like she was seeing a ghost behind the wheel. I reversed the car, not fast. Not dramatically, just enough to break whatever was about to happen. I turned the corner and parked down the street, then walked the long way back to my brother's apartment, hands in pockets, feeling like I had just walked away from something that used to be sacred. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Not Maeve this time. It was Harper, her best friend, the one who always said I was too sensitive, but secretly sent me funny dog memes when Maeve forgot our anniversary. Her text was short. You okay? She's a wreck, a wreck. She was a wreck. I stared at that sentence for what felt like hours. I was the one who watched his wife smile at another man like she was 22 again. I was the one who walked away with a piece of himself missing. And she was the wreck? That night, I finally listened to the voicemail Maeve left at 3:47 a.m. The moment I pressed play, my throat closed. Her voice was small, too small for someone who had looked so big under those rooftop lights. Eli, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I didn't do anything. I swear. I just needed to feel something. Please come home. That phrase hit harder than anything else. I just needed to feel something. What was I then? Background noise? I didn't call her back. Instead, I opened our wedding album for the first time in years. I sat on my brother's lumpy couch, flipping pages until I reached that one photo. Her in her dress, eyes closed, forehead against mine, like we were the only two people on Earth. And now, we weren't even two people in the same sentence. She needed to feel something. Well, so did I. And this silence, it was starting to feel like mine. The next time she called, I answered. I wish I hadn't. Her voice sounded rehearsed, soft, cracked at all the right places, like she'd been practicing a breakdown in the mirror. I didn't say much, mostly just listened, which I've become an expert at over the last decade. She kept repeating that it wasn't what it looked like, as if that phrase could erase the way her body leaned into his touch, how her smile looked like it had a password I no longer knew. "Eli, please, just come home so we can talk." "I can explain everything," she begged. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I simply said, "I don't want explanations. I want to understand why I wasn't enough." That shut her up. Not because I was being profound, but because she didn't have the answer. Or maybe she did, and it was just too ugly to say out loud. The silence between us stretched over the next few days like drying paint. Slow, uncomfortable, suffocating. I stayed at my brother's place, pretending to be helpful around the apartment, making weak coffee and fixing a cabinet door he never asked me to. My brother, Leon, bless him, didn't push. He just handed me a beer every night and sat next to me on the couch while we watched whatever was loud enough to distract us both. But everything felt loud now. The wind, the street outside, the inside of my head. And still somehow, Maeve's silence was the loudest of all. On the fourth day, she sent a photo. No caption. Just a picture of her hand holding the necklace I gave her on our second anniversary, the one with the little gold seashell from our trip to Cape May. It was sitting on the edge of the bathroom sink, like a piece of herself she didn't know what to do with anymore. I stared at that image longer than I should have. Was it an apology? A surrender? A goodbye? Later that night, Harper texted again. "She's not eating. She looks awful. She cried at work. Eli, you should talk to her." I almost laughed. Crying at work doesn't erase what she did. Looking awful doesn't undo the choice to light a match near the dry parts of our marriage. But I didn't respond to Harper, not because I didn't care, but because I was too tired of speaking into voids that only echoed when guilt finally settled in. That same night, I drove past the house. I don't know why. Curiosity, I guess. Or maybe some twisted part of me hoped I'd see her with him again, just to confirm I wasn't insane. But the lights were off, porch empty, no shadows in the windows. It looked like the house we bought 7 years ago, before promotions and parties and that creeping sense that I had become furniture in her life. Comfortable, useful, unnoticed. I parked half a block away, engine running. For 20 minutes, I watched our own windows like an outsider, spying on someone else's pain. And then, just as I was about to drive off, she stepped outside in a hoodie 3 sizes too big, mine, and sat on the steps like she had that morning, only now she wasn't crying. She just stared at the street. I know she couldn't see me in the dark, but I swear she looked right at me. And for the first time in this entire mess, I felt something worse than betrayal. I felt pity. The hoodie she wore that night, oversized, navy, with a small tear at the cuff, wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was my second skin. I wore it through college exams, through hangovers, through nights spent fixing routers at 3 a.m. I'd left it behind accidentally in the hallway closet when I stormed out. Seeing her wear it now felt invasive, like watching someone else wear your grief. I sat frozen in my car, still parked half a block away, watching her sit on those steps like she was trying to summon a version of me that didn't exist anymore. The worst part was how peaceful she looked. Not sad, not broken, just blank. Like she had pressed pause on herself. No calls came in that night, no texts. And for the first time in a long while, she gave me silence that wasn't begging for an answer. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt disposable. The next morning, I went back to the house. Not to move back in, don't get me wrong, but to get the rest of my stuff. I didn't warn her. I used the key she probably forgot I still had. The house smelled like her shampoo, and those stupid vanilla candles she always insisted didn't smell too sweet. But it wasn't warm. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a hotel room someone had cried in. She was asleep on the couch, knees curled up, face swollen, mascara dried like tracks on her cheeks. My hoodie still clung to her like a lifeline. I didn't wake her, I just went upstairs, grabbed my things, and packed with robotic precision. T-shirts, socks, toothbrush. The ceramic mug with the chip she never let me throw away. It wasn't until I opened the nightstand drawer that I found the envelope. My name scribbled on the front in her rushed, sharp handwriting. I wish I could say I didn't open it, that I walked away, that I had dignity. But of course I opened it. Of course I needed to know what version of the truth she was going to hand me like a Band-Aid. Inside was a letter, 5 pages long. The first line read, "You don't know how long I've been waiting for you to notice I'm not okay." What followed wasn't an explanation. It was a mess of confessions, contradictions, and guilt-drenched rambling. She said she never slept with him, that it wasn't physical, that she liked how he listened to her at the office, how he made her feel interesting, important, alive. She said she thought I didn't see her anymore, that I only looked at screens and tax bills and grocery lists, that she was lonely. Not because of what I did, but because of what I stopped doing. She wrote that the moment she saw me leave the party, something inside her cracked. I always imagined if I ever did something wrong, you'd yell, you'd curse, you'd call me names. I never expected you to just vanish. That line hit me harder than I care to admit. She was right. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just walked away like I was already dead inside. But here's the thing. That letter wasn't an apology. It was a plea wrapped in self-pity. She wanted me to feel responsible for her cheating heart, like I'd failed to keep her entertained, and so the circus left town. I put the letter back in the drawer. She was still sleeping when I walked out, and this time, I locked the door behind me. It's strange how the body remembers routines even when the heart refuses. I found myself making 2 cups of coffee that morning, out of habit, one black for me, one with almond milk and a single sugar cube for Maeve. I stood there, in Leon's cramped kitchen, holding a mug meant for a woman I no longer understood. I poured hers down the sink without tasting mine. The letter she'd written haunted me more than any confrontation could have. Her words wrapped around my ribs like vines, choking me with sentences that sounded sincere but tasted like manipulation. I felt invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me. So did I. For years. But this is where the story takes a turn I wasn't prepared for. 2 days after finding her letter, I got an email. Not a text, not a call. An email from a name I didn't recognize. Chandler R. Deeks. The subject line read, "I'm sorry to reach out like this, but you deserve to know the truth." I opened it immediately, heart pounding before I even processed a word. Chandler, it turned out, was the boyfriend of another woman from Maeve's office. He said he'd overheard something he couldn't ignore and had debated for days whether or not to contact me. "I know we don't know each other," he wrote, "but I couldn't live with myself if I kept my mouth shut." According to Chandler, the man from the party, the one I saw dancing with Maeve, wasn't some coworker or harmless flirt. His name was Rylan, a creative director from another firm they partnered with, and apparently this wasn't the first time he and Maeve had been seen getting close at events. Chandler said his girlfriend had told him that there were rumors in the office, whispers, even a running joke about how the married one always finds her way to Rylan's side. I sat with that email for hours, reread it 10 times, forwarded it to no one. I didn't cry, I didn't throw things, I just felt numb. I realized that night at the party wasn't an isolated lapse in judgment. It was just the moment I finally noticed a story that had already been unfolding behind my back. Later that evening, I checked our shared cloud account, something Maeve probably forgot I still had access to. I wasn't even looking for anything specific. I don't know why I opened it. Curiosity, pain, revenge. But there it was, a folder titled Pitch Decks, with subfolders named after campaigns she'd been working on. One folder had a password. That alone made my skin crawl. I cracked it easily. Our old dog's name and the year we adopted him. Inside, photos. Not graphic, but intimate. Her and Rylan at events, her with her hand on his chest, her curled up next to him at what looked like a hotel bar. One shot of her laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years, head tilted back, eyes closed, free. I closed the laptop slowly, like it might explode. She hadn't lied when she said they didn't sleep together. Not technically, not that I could prove, but everything else, the energy, the secrets, the emotional fingerprints, was all over the screen. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unfeel it. That was the night I knew something fundamental had shifted. The version of Maeve I fell in love with. The one who left me notes on the bathroom mirror, who cried at movie trailers, who held my hand in traffic like it was sacred. She wasn't just gone. She'd been replaced, quietly, strategically, and worst of all, with my permission. I had let us rot. And now I had to decide if I was brave enough to finish what I started when I walked out of that party. Or if I'd do what I always did, pretend not to see, not to feel, not to act. But this time, I didn't want to disappear quietly. I wanted her to feel it. 3 days passed before I saw her again. I didn't plan it. I didn't want to. I just needed to pick up a few more things I had forgotten. The boring stuff, like paperwork, and an external hard drive I hadn't backed up in months. I half hoped she wouldn't be home, but of course she was, standing barefoot in the doorway, like she'd been listening from my car all day. Her eyes were wide, but not surprised. She looked smaller than I remembered, like someone had drained the boldness right out of her. For a long second, neither of us spoke. Just the wind and a distant lawnmower somewhere in the neighborhood filled the space between us. "I didn't delete anything," she finally said. "I figured if you found it, you'd at least know I wasn't hiding anymore." That was her opening line. No apology, no confrontation. Just a half-truth dangling like a truce flag in the air between us. I wanted to say something cruel. I had words lined up. I had monologues sharpened and ready to cut. But I didn't use them, not because I forgave her, but because I didn't want to share anything more with her, not even my anger. She stepped aside and let me in, as if that meant something. The house smelled like it used to. Laundry detergent, lemons, something soft cooking on the stove, like she'd expected me to stay longer. I walked through each room like a ghost, touching nothing, collecting only what I came for. Meanwhile, she followed, quietly. I could feel her eyes on me, trying to catch signs of softness. There were none. When I reached the office and started packing files, she finally said it. "I didn't sleep with him." I didn't turn around. She kept going, voice shaking. "I wanted to." That night, at the party. I thought about it. I fantasized about hurting you the way I felt hurt, but I didn't. I stopped it. I closed the drawer slowly. "So you're proud you almost did?" She flinched like I slapped her. "No, I'm saying I realized I couldn't, that you still mattered." I faced her then. For the first time in weeks, I looked her in the eyes. Not as my wife, not as the woman I married, but as a stranger trying to wear her face. "I didn't leave because you wanted someone else. I left because I stopped recognizing you." Her lip trembled. She tried to reach for me, but I took a step back. "You don't get to use regret as a reset button." "I never meant to fall out of love with you," she whispered. That line hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just cruel, it was honest. And it came too late. I zipped up the bag, walked past her. At the front door, I paused, maybe for dramatic effect. Maybe because some naive part of me wanted her to chase me one last time. But she didn't. She just stood there, fingers curled into the sleeve of my old hoodie, watching the man she used to love walk out like he wasn't coming back. And I wasn't. Not because I didn't love her anymore, but because I had finally started loving myself just enough to stop begging someone else to. The strange thing about walking away is that the world doesn't stop to applaud you for doing it. There's no medal for self-respect, no parade for surviving emotional starvation. After I left the house that day, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow, and the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was noisy in a different way. My phone didn't ring. The people who knew us as Eli and Maeve stayed quiet too, like everyone was waiting for one of us to admit we'd overreacted. But I wasn't overreacting. I had just finally reacted at all. I stayed off social media, not because I feared seeing her face, but because I feared what my own profile still represented. A happy couple, dinner dates, anniversary selfies with filters hiding the tension beneath. My life online was a liar, and I wasn't ready to watch the timeline remind me of what never really was. But one night, maybe out of weakness, maybe out of some twisted hunger for confirmation, I logged into her old tagged photos, and there he was. Ryland's shirt unbuttoned just enough, arm around her waist. The caption read, "Power duo closing deals and stealing spotlights." Comments full of laughing emojis. Clapping hands. Inside jokes I didn't understand. It was from 6 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the party. I shut my laptop so hard it bounced. Later that week, Harper called. Not texted, called. I let it ring. Then I let it ring again. On the third try, I picked up, voice flat. She skipped the pleasantries. "She's not okay, Eli." I stayed silent. "I know you're angry. You should be. But she's breaking that word again. Breaking. Why was everyone so obsessed with Maeve's ability to cry? She lied. She broke something. Now she's sad." "That's how this works," I said. Harper sighed, and I could hear her struggle on the other end. "Look, I'm not defending what she did, but I've known her longer than you, and I'm telling you, this wasn't just a moment of weakness. This was fear. She didn't know how to tell you she didn't feel chosen anymore. That hit harder than I expected. Because even though I wanted to scream at the world that I gave Maeve everything, there was a truth I couldn't outrun. I stopped showing her that she was the center of mine. Somewhere between mortgage payments and dentist appointments, I became a ghost in my own life. And maybe she went looking for color in someone else's sky. But did that justify it? Did that make her betrayal poetic instead of selfish? I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I sat on the motel bed, flicking through a notebook I'd started keeping just to process it all. I had this line written 3 days before the party that I didn't even remember jotting down. I missed the way she used to hold my arm in public, like I was the only one keeping her upright. I stared at it for a long time. Then I tore out the page, folded it into a small square, and lit it with a match over the bathroom sink. Some memories aren't for healing. Some are just for burning. The last time I saw Maeve was outside the courthouse. We weren't fighting. There was no screaming, no begging or twisting of rings. Just two people who used to mean everything to each other, standing in the kind of silence that only follows a storm. She looked tired, not disheveled, not broken, just real. More real than she'd been in months. She handed me a manila envelope, papers, keys, a list of accounts that still had my name on them. No more notes, no more letters, just the practical remains of what we used to call forever. I said thank you, and I meant it. Because despite everything, despite the party, the photos, the lies, there was a strange sense of relief now that it was over. Not a clean break. More like an unraveling that had finally reached its last thread. For once, I didn't feel like the ghost in the room. I felt present. I felt alive. I wasn't defined by her choices anymore. That evening, I drove to the lake where she and I used to go during our first year of marriage. Not out of nostalgia, but because it was finally mine again. I sat on the bench overlooking the water, notebook in hand, and for the first time since all of this began, I didn't write about her. I wrote about me, about the small things I'd stopped noticing, the way coffee tastes better when no one is watching, the weight that lifts when you stop waiting for someone to come home, the quiet joy of reclaiming your name, not as someone's husband, but just you. Now, I wake up in a small apartment that smells like fresh paint and burnt toast. I go on long walks with no destination. I joined a book club where nobody knows my story. I even signed up for a pottery class, because why not? There's no big twist here, no dramatic confrontation, just something I never thought I'd find again, peace. And maybe someday, someone new. But for now, I'm just learning to be enough for myself. Thank you for listening to my story. And if you've ever walked away from something you thought you'd never survive, I hope you know this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Just walk quietly and let life begin again. Have you ever experienced a moment in history, personal or global, that changed the way you saw the world? Tell us in the comments below. We want to hear your story, and don't forget, you're watching Reddit Confessions.